Three questions constitute the basic tenet of this podcast. Who are we? Where do we come from? And where are we going? The two first questions there, they go very tightly together, I think. Even the third one, I'll come back to that. But who are we? Or rather, what are we? Humans, we human beings, what are we? Who are we? And where do we come from? Goes very much together because there's so much ancient wisdom that we know of today. If you just look for it, you can find so much ancient wisdom that explains and talks very much about things that we have forgotten in the Western world since the so-called scientific revolution, which I've talked a lot about and had guests talking about as well. But lately, for instance, I have delved a little bit into the hermetic wisdom, the knowledge that was conveyed by a person or an entity, rather, called the Hermes Trismegistus, which translates to Thoth in Egyptian tradition. So the traditional ancient Egyptian god or entity or deity Thoth is the same entity as Hermes Trismegistus in Greek tradition. And in the material that you can find that can be derived from this source, it is there are so many deep pieces of wisdom, and I might be able to get back to that in some video log or something or an episode. We'll see about that, but I will definitely delve more into this. There are, for instance, the seven hermetic principles. I can just mention two. The first being that consciousness, well, it doesn't say this word by word, but it actually boils down to consciousness precedes matter. So consciousness is primary. And the second one is the very famous as above, so below. And the first one is, of course, not, it's still controversial. The first notion that consciousness precedes matter is still controversial in most scientific circuits, but there are some cutting edge scientists and researchers and academics and scholars out there who are now jumping on that train now and saying that this must be the case. Consciousness must be primary, and we know that some quantum physicists already almost 100 years ago said things along those lines. And the second one, as above, so below, which means that patterns and features in the macrocosm are reflected in patterns and features in the microcosm. That is basic science today. I think it is safe to say. And when it comes to that third question, where are we going? I have this view upon time, which some of you may know who have listened to what I've been saying in certain episodes about time, writing about it on Medium as well, and also interviewing people talking about it with the interviewees on different episodes. I think that contrary to what we are led to believe or think, the view we have in our Western society on time, that the past is what is shaping us. The past is creating us. If we can't understand who we are unless we understand our past. I think, well, there's some truth to that, but I think that it's mainly actually a flawed, a misconception, because I think, as Alan Watts says, and he's of course referring to Eastern wisdom when he says this, that the actuality of things, the reality is that the past is the wake of the present. So we are where we are now, or we did what we did. We acted the way we acted because we were supposed to end up where we are now. And that also means that the future, that this present moment, the present, is the wake of the future. So we do what we do now because we are supposed to end up somewhere. And that doesn't mean that I think that everything is predestined. I think we have free will, but I think I'm convinced that we have, all of us, collectively as well as individually, our individual souls and our collective higher selves have a goal. I mean, there are several different paths that we can take. I mean, innumerable paths really, but there is we strive for something. We are going towards some kind of goal that we feel deep inside of us, and which is the goal that the higher self has. But then our ego, our three-dimensional, the three-dimensional part of us down here on Earth, or down here on this Earth plane, has free will and can sometimes make decisions that make us deviate from this kind of general what's the word, trajectory that we are following. So anyway, long story short, I think that it all goes together. So future, when I said that the two first questions go together, but I didn't mention the third one, they actually all three go together, because I mean, if we understand who we are, we know also where we're going in a way. Anyway, I have been listening a lot to Angelo Di Lullo, who features in episode, I can't remember the number, I think it's episode number 73 on the podcast. I will put it in the video. Angelo Di Lullo, fascinating person who has had an awakening, and he's now coaching people who want to awaken to the real reality. I won't go into in detail into what that entails, but anyway, it talks a lot about non-duality and non-separation, that there is no separation between, not only not between people, but there is no separation between myself and anything around me, really. I mean, the plants here in my room, or the couch I'm sitting on, animals, planets, the sun, the galaxy, and everything. It's all connected. And also there's no time, and time is just there is really only one moment. It's the same moment that keeps going on all the time. If we didn't sleep, we would be able to experience that more clearly, that there is actually only one moment. This is what Angelo Di Lullo talks a lot about, and I listen a lot to his videos, and I can't say that I have myself had very many moments of profound transcendental nature where I have seen or felt or sensed the deeper stratum of reality, except maybe one episode that happened when I was in my early 20s. I've told about that a couple of times in episodes, and written about it also, where I, for a few days or almost a week, felt agony because I couldn't stand the notion that I should be that lump of flesh that was inside my skull. That lump of flesh inside my skull, aka the brain, was me. I couldn't stand that thought, so I think now afterwards, it took many years before I could start understanding what actually happened there, but I slowly have understood that what probably happened there was that my higher self wanted to tell me something, tell me that it is exactly like, I mean, my thought there was real, that I am not that lump of flesh within my skull, so it was a correct thought, and it's wonderful to realize that you aren't that, you are so much more, but I was too young to broaden the scope there, so I was just, anyway, I don't have to go deeper into that, but what I want to say is that just a couple of weeks ago, I had another interesting experience, which ties into with what Angelo says in his videos about no separation, that there's no separation, that there's no distance. I mean, distance is something we perceive in this three-dimensional reality, but it's just a perception and a thought, really. There is no true distance in the real reality. So anyway, I was at ease one day a couple of weeks ago, and I exited a store where I've been shopping some items, and I wasn't thinking of anything in particular. I was feeling at ease, as I said, and I was calm, and I was just strolling across the street there, and then when I reached the other side of the street, all of a sudden everything felt like everything around me just felt like it was stuck together. It was kind of glued together. The sidewalk, the cars around me, the trees, the people that I met on the sidewalk. It was like it was one thing. Everything was one thing, and I was just immersed in it. And I was kind of, my consciousness was moving around within this one thing, which was kind of interesting. And I wasn't, this time I wasn't scared like I was in the early 20s when I experienced something similar, because back then I got tunnel vision. I saw things very differently also, but it was more like a tunnel vision, and that was scary to me. But this was a feeling of, or a sense of everything just being one thing. And it didn't last very long, maybe a couple of minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. I just walked along that sidewalk and was baffled at this very peculiar sense. So I was like, wow, okay, maybe this is what they're talking about. But as I said, it faded away, and I started thinking about it. And when I started thinking about it, it kind of dissipated. But I've tried to reconstruct or recall that sense and get it back into my perception after that. And I have almost managed to do it, but it hasn't come back in that salient a way. So I hope to be able to have Angelo DeLullo back on the show later this fall for a second episode, for a second interview. I mean, I have so many more questions to ask him than I was able to do last time I talked to him. But he is a busy man, which is a bit paradoxical since he lives a life where time really isn't a thing. But anyway, I mean, he's here in this three-dimensional world, and he's also part of the society. He works as a doctor. So he also has a calendar, and he has told me that he won't be able to do this conversation with me on this podcast until November at the earliest, maybe even December. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll have Angelo DeLullo back on the show later this fall. But what I do know is that the next episode on the podcast, which will be airing on Wednesday, is featuring a living legend. Speaking about ancient civilizations and ancient wisdom, this man has been diving into what happened to Homo sapiens, to humanity, way, way back in history, and why did we become the species that we are, and what actually happened to us maybe 200,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, anyway, far back. And this man, which I think many of you don't even realize that he's still working, and he's still very much alive and kicking. But he's 87 years old now. What is very special about this man when it comes to studying and exploring and delving into ancient civilizations is that he thinks that alien intelligence, visitors from other planets, basically from outer space, has played a significant role in the development of Homo sapiens. What's his name? Erich von Däniken, of course. Erich von Däniken, featuring in the next episode on Wednesday. And the episode after that will be featuring another person who's been super pivotal to the understanding of how civilization started, and that it is probably much, much older than we are led to believe through the school textbooks that we give to our children. Robert Schoch, Dr. Robert Schoch from Boston University. So stay tuned for those 2 episodes, people. I love you guys. Thank you. Bye for now. If you like this video and other interviews and talks on Mind the Shift, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. And you can follow Mind the Shift on Facebook and Instagram. And you can follow me, Anders Bolling, on all the main social media and also on medium.com. Thank you.